Hello everybody, welcome to another video. In this video we are going to cover the topic environmental audit. Firstly we should know what environmental audit is. If we talk about Environmental Protection Agency, according to this agency, environmental audit is a systematic, documented, periodic and objective review by a regulated entity of facility, operations and practices related to meeting environmental requirements. In this video, we will firstly cover the concept and features of environmental audit. See, the term environmental audit means different things to different people. Terms such as environmental assessment, environmental survey, environmental review are used to describe the same type of activity. In addition, environmental audit addresses only environmental matters, whereas others use the term to mean an audit of health, safety and environmental matters. Basically, environmental audit is an independent evaluation of policy and principles, systems, procedures, practices and performance and other elements of a business that are related to environment. The systematic examination of the interaction between any business operations and its surroundings is known as environmental audit. Environmental audit includes all emissions to air, land and water, legal constraints and the effects of the neighbor community, landscape and ecology, and public's perception of the operating company in the local area. Environmental audit does not stop at compliance with legislation, nor it is a greenwashing public relation exercise. Rather, it is a total strategic approach to the organization's activities. Now, we should move on to the features of environmental audit. Firstly, the point is management tool. Environmental audit is generally considered as one of the management tool which is a part of internal control system and is mainly used to assess, evaluate and manage environmental performance of a company. Moving on to the second feature, which is aim of environmental audit. A green audit may be conducted for many purposes. For example, to comply with environmental laws or as a social responsibility measure or to meet some certification requirements. Now moving on to the next point, which is systematic. Environmental audit is a systematic process that must be carefully planned, structured and organized. As it is a part of long-term process of evaluation and checking, it needs to be a repeatable process so that over time it can be easily used by different teams of people in such a way that the results are comparable and can reflect change in both quantitative and qualitative terms. Moving on to the next point, which is documented. Like any other audit, the base of any environmental auditing is that its findings are supported by documents and verifiable information. Now moving on to the next feature, which is periodic. Environmental audit is generally conducted at a predefined intervals. It is a long-term process because it can sometimes take long time before sustainable environmental change and improvement can be tracked clearly. Now, next point is objective evaluation. Though environmental auditing is conducted using pre-decided policies, procedures, and a proper documented system, there is always an element of subjectivity in an audit, particularly if it is conducted internally. Now, moving on to the last feature of environmental audit, which is environmental impact assessment. EIA is a tool used to predict, evaluate and analyze environmental impacts mostly before a project commences. It assesses the potential environmental effects of a proposed facility, whereas environmental audit looks at environmental performance for an existing operation or activity. The essential purpose of an environmental audit is the systematic scrutiny of environmental performance throughout a company's existing operations. So, moving on to the next part, which is objectives of environmental audit. Environmental audit have some basic goals. First one of which is it improves efficiency of environmental management system. Environmental auditing encourages an organization to examine its operations in a constructive manner and is cornerstone of an effective environmental management system. It helps in assessing performance of the environmental management system, identifies deficiencies in the system, and provides the basis for environmental improvement plans. On the basis of findings of environmental audit, management can recommend corrective actions and identify further training needs. Now, moving on to the next objective, which is compliance with environmental laws and standards. The most important benefit of environmental audit is that it ensures cost-effective compliance with the environmental laws and regulations, industry guidelines and standards, and companies' own environmental policies. Now, moving on to the next goal, which is risk mitigation. There is a growing belief that environmental issues represent a source of risk in terms of unforeseen or foreseen reputational damage or similar other risks. In fact, it is the concern regarding environmental risk which has led to development of the field of environmental auditing. Environmental audit can act as effective risk management tool for assessing compliance with environmental legislation and thereby assisting your company in avoiding the risk of prosecution and fines arising from potential environmental breaches. This is particularly true for those involved in hazardous pollution industries. Now, moving on to the next objective, which is meeting stakeholders' expectations. These days, stakeholders have heightened expectations for a company's environmental performance. They are concerned about environmental responsibility and also want to know about potential hazards and future environmental liabilities of the companies. Conducting environmental audits will help in reassuring various stakeholders that the company is living up to its environmental principles. It helps in enhancing reputation of the company as a good corporate citizen. It assists good relations with control authorities and also increases confidence with the general public. Now, moving on to the next goal, which is reduction in operational inefficiencies. Environmental auditing can highlight areas of inefficiencies in the operations and processes. For example, where the amount of resources used are out of proportion to the amount of items or services produced and sold. By identifying operational inefficiencies, a company may be able to reduce its cost and improve its environmental performance. Furthermore, it also highlights ways of safeguarding the environment. Now, moving on to the next point, which is encourages continual improvement. By pinpointing both strengths and weaknesses in the environmental management and other operating systems relating to environment on a regular basis, an environmental audit encourages continual improvement. It is to be noted that environmental audit will cost an organization both time and money, but if approached correctly, the organization should be able to recover these costs very easily. Now, moving on to the last objective, which is compliance with certification requirements. Conducting an environmental audit can be an important step towards gaining a company-wide certifications like ISO 14001 or Cradle to give or product specification certification from organizations like Energy Star, LEED and Forest Stewardship Council, Chlorine Free Products Association, etc. Now that's it for the objectives. Moving on to the next part, which is process of environmental audit. See, process of environmental audit is divided into 4 steps or stages. The first stage is pre-audit or planning stage. During this stage of audit, generally some steps are taken, such as collecting background information about the entity, defining the objectives of the audit, defining the scope, choosing audit criteria, selecting the audit team members, developing audit plan and protocols, informing the facility, and the last one is review. Now, moving on to the next stage, which is on-site or field audit. In this stage, we have to follow some steps such as opening conference, facility tour, site or facility inspection, collecting sufficient, appropriate and reliable audit evidences to check the activities and performance, records and document review, staff interviews, initial review of findings, and closing or exit conference. Now, moving on to the third stage, which is the stage of post-audit. The steps involved in the stage of post-audit are final evaluation of findings, drafting preliminary audit report, get approval of management, hold exit conference, discuss recommendations, prepare and submit final report. Now moving on to the last stage, which is follow-up or review stage. This is also called corrective action follow-up phase. Now that is it for the process of environmental audit. Now moving on to the next part, which is tools and techniques that are used in environmental auditing. The first tool is checklist. Checklists are very useful tool used to ensure that different tasks or topics are included during the audit. They are very useful in specialized cases where a complex range of issues and questions need to be asked to ensure that nothing is missed. Now, moving on to the next tool, which is questionnaires. Audit protocols or audit questionnaires provide the basis and structuring for most of the audits. They are based upon checklist questionnaires but are more complex and include more details and sometimes logistical information and data relating to the audit and the site being audited. Moving on to the next tool, which is questioning. Questioning is one of the most crucial aspects of auditing, yet from a training and awareness point of view, it is often given the least attention. The purpose is information gathering in nature and not an interrogation. The questionnaire must therefore be sensitive to the perspective of the auditee and avoid making the questions accusatory, judgmental, or aggressive. Now, next technique is observation. Observation is a vital component of an auditing exercise. Observation is a disciplined activity which must be carried out in a very deliberate or controlled manner. Now, moving on to the next point, which is photographs. These are a very valuable aid in audit process. However, in order to use them, a number of important practical points must be borne in the mind. The most important one is formal approval before using this technique. Now, last technique is research. It is useful to try and undertake some background research and investigation into the site or company to be audited. Now, that is it for tools and techniques used in environmental auditing. So, thank you for watching the video.